Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Amobi Okugo, host of Money Talks, a new podcast from a frugal athlete in partnership with Billion or Bust Media. Money Talks explores the world of business behind professional athletes. I speak with financial advisors, business managers, marketing and PR professionals who specialize in running the business of being a pro athlete. Tune into Money Talks on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find new episodes on billionourbustmedia.com and afrugalathlete.com. Again, billionourbustmedia.com or afrugalathlete.com.
Good day, folks, and welcome to the 2 Cents Podcast with Jay Richardson. I am your host, Jay Richardson, and as always, please check out the 2 Cents Podcast. Check out the 2 Cents Show on Instagram at 2 Cents Show. Like, subscribe to the podcast, share it, and, get familiar because it's good and it's going to get better, and we really, really love what we do here. Now, that being said, I have got to get into the news that is just kind of dominating the headlines for the past 48 hours, and it's it's our favorite guy in sports this year. It seems he's just having one of the wildest years and just can't seem to keep his name out of headlines. Some of it seems intentional. This next story, however, I do not think he planned on. But before we get into that story, I got to just take you through the timeline of Antonio Brown and the saga that continues. First things first, had beef with the Pittsburgh Steelers from really a couple years ago with the quarterback and with management. Wanted out for a while. Finally got his trade to the Oakland Raiders. Got a nice deal. Got a good chunk of change. Was going to be the highest paid wide receiver, and then he sabotaged his transition to the Raiders. Number of things. It all started with the cryotherapy and the feet thing and not being able to practice, and then he turned the new helmets that they made him wear into an absolute debacle and tried to sue the league to wear a different helmet or something. Then let that go. Just let it go. Then wasn't at practice and was missing things and was missing sessions with trainers, and before you know it, he was fined heading into the week of week one, like heading into that game that they were supposed to play on a Monday night. He was fined Thursday and Friday and was subsequently released by the Oakland Raiders just after we thought everything was going to be good. I mean, literally, I don't know, it must have been Thursday night. He put out that video where he's talking to John Gruden. Now we're coming to find out that he was allowed to record that conversation, that he did reach out to Gruden, which was the first thing I thought when I saw that thing. I thought, man, in California you can't record conversations. I just knew that because I lived in the state. But the point is, that was looked like a Nike ad. It was so well edited. Says he wanted to be a Raider, yada yada yada. Before you know it, roll credits, and we're all thinking AB's going to play Monday night for the Oakland Raiders. You know what? They're going to figure it out. Mayock, brings the hammer down on these fines because he's just sick of him. Him and AB almost get into an altercation. AB threatens to punch him in the face, and before you know it, he's released from the Oakland Raiders. The moment he's released, and I got to be honest, I called this. I was at my my news station, and I said, people were asking me, what do you think's going to happen with AB? He's got released from the Raiders, and I said, listen, AB is going to be signed in the next hour or two. I guarantee you. And there's only one or two people I can see signing him, and that's either Jerry or that's Bill. And I meant Jerry Jones with the Cowboys only because he's used to diva receivers a la T.O., and he loves guys who he knows can make an impact right away, and he loves when his Cowboys are in the headlines, and he likes guys who puts butts in seats, and AB does that. And the only other guy I could think was Bill Belichick, and that is because he has a history of also working with diva receivers a la Randy Moss and Ocho Cinco, but also he's the only guy that Antonio Brown would respect enough that he'd, fall in line and assimilate the Patriot way. Also, Antonio Brown has been wanting to go to the Patriots for the better part of 2 years now, which people don't realize. He asked to be traded there a couple seasons ago, and the Steelers would not do it, which makes his release and then his immediate signing within like 30 minutes to the Patriots all the more curious. Now, the NFL will not be investigating tampering by the Patriots, because I don't know that there's anything you can really prove, but if you watch all the signs and how things lined up, as much as people call AB crazy, he kind of seemed clever in a sense that he was able to force his way out of Oakland, somewhere that now, as we look back on it, I don't know that he ever really wanted to be in Oakland. I think he wanted to be a Patriot all along, and the moment he got the trade, because remember, this wasn't a free agency signing, he was traded to Oakland, so he had no control over this, and he wanted to take control. So he just found a way to self-destruct, on the surface at least, and sabotage himself to the point where the Raiders said, what the hell is up with this guy? Like, we don't even know if he wants to be here. Maybe he doesn't want to be here. You know what? We can't deal with it. And they released him, and then he went nuts in celebration of his release, and I think it's because he knew Bill was going to be calling, which Bill called immediately, and now AB is a Patriot, and we're number one in practice, and everyone's, who's a Patriots fan is cheering for it, and everything's all good, except it's AB we're talking about. So things are never over. And sure enough, in AB fashion, news breaks again. And this news is a little bit different. A couple nights ago, not even 48 hours ago, we all read the headline, Antonio Brown accused of rape in a lawsuit, federal lawsuit, civil suit, accusing him of sexual assault from back in 2017 and 2018. Now, this has nothing to do with football. This is all off the field stuff. But when you really dig into this case, and I hate, to get into these kind of things, because you never know who's lying, who's telling the truth. All you know is that someone was hurt and felt strongly enough to file federal charges, and that's serious stuff. It's serious for the accuser. It is very serious for the accused, in this case AB, could ruin this man's career. And if he did what he's alleged to have doing, then it probably should be ruined. Here's what the statement said, that Antonio Brown basically sexually assaulted a woman named Brittany Taylor, who was a gymnast whom he'd met at Central Michigan when they were in college, so about 12 years ago. And he later hired her as a trainer. Long story short, she had trained him for years, and they had engaged in, some consensual sexual encounters, and then some that she claims were not consensual. She claims that on 3 separate encounters, he was sexually inappropriate and actually raped her. And that, to me, is just it's bizarre for a lot of reasons. And you guys listen to somebody who was raised by a woman, raised by my mother. I got 7 aunties that grew up in a household, in a family full of women and female cousins, and I love them dearly, and we've dealt with sexual assault in our family. So I am particularly sensitive to this kind of topic and subject, but I'm also sensitive to athletes and accusations, because there's been so many times where we've seen athletes be accused of something, and the moment the accuser either drops the charges or is discovered that these were lies, the accuser just kind of fades away, and the athlete's kind of left to pick up the pieces. Luke Walton, was accused of sexual assault just in the NBA offseason a little over a year ago, and once again that went away really, really quickly. You got other athletes, player for the Falcons, who did time in prison for an accused rape he didn't commit, and was ultimately released, but had most of his career taken from him. I mean, that's an incredible story and a heartbreaking story. And the accuser, you never hear about what happens to them. They just kind of go on back to their life. Kobe Bryant was accused of sexual assault, people forget, years ago, and then they found, I don't even know, like 30 samples of different DNA in her underwear, and they thought this couldn't have been just Kobe. So there's a lot of things that have gone on in the athlete community where you got people making accusations, and you just never know what's true. And then sometimes you got situations like Ben Roethlisberger accused of rape, and he ended up settling and paying a good chunk of change. So clearly something happened there. With this, though, it just seems very, very curious, the timing of it all. A couple years later, she releases a statement and files a civil suit, not a criminal suit, which is not past the statute of limitations. She could still file criminal, but I assume she figures there's no evidence, so we'll just go civil and see if we can, I assume, beat him up in the court of public opinion and obviously get a settlement or some money from him for what she alleges that she went through. Here's the strange thing. She says it happened 3 different times, and as the facts start to come out, you find that she was repeatedly flying to him in situations where she was training him, and then they hung out and did other adult things, and she was claiming that every time she'd fly to work with him, he'd do something inappropriate or rape her. And I thought to myself, if I was somebody that, was hired to train someone and just train them, and they did something inappropriate, I probably wouldn't train them. I certainly wouldn't spend my own hard-earned money to fly back there to be sexually assaulted again. That doesn't seem like that makes a whole lot of sense. So she flew back to Antonio Brown 3 separate occasions to be sexually assaulted all 3 times, she claims, and she just kept going back. I don't understand it. I think that would, even if you were under contract to train him, I think once he does something inappropriate, that probably is a void of the contract, and you can get out of that. So I didn't understand that, but what's even stranger is the timing. The NFL, once the news broke, right away said, we have got to interview you, bring you in, because we're going to put him on the commissioner's exempt list possibly if we think there's a chance he did this, and we want to get your side of the story because we really want, obviously the NFL doesn't want the PR nightmare of not taking this seriously. It doesn't want the PR nightmare of seeming soft on anything involving, women and something like this, which is extremely serious. And she said, well, I'd love to, but you're going to have to wait a couple weeks because I am getting married. And that was a bit of a surprise to everyone. They thought, man, who weeks before their wedding decides they want to file these charges and, release this information. But Ms. Taylor that was her timing of it all. And then, of course, Antonio Brown's legal team made their statement denying everything that happened and denies each and every allegation of the lawsuit. And he will pursue all legal remedies, and he's also possibly pursuing a countersuit against her for the false accusation. That's not surprising, although I would pull back on the countersuit if I was him. Sometimes when you go too far back at the accuser, it can have damning effects as well. He claims he was approached by the accuser, Ms. Taylor, in 2017, shortly after he signed his contract, making him the highest paid wide receiver, and she wanted him to invest $1.6 million into her business project, I believe her gym, or maybe the land that owned the gym, and he did not know that it was involving the land, and he said, hey, listen, I don't know that that's a good investment. I don't think that investment makes sense. What he didn't know was that she had just been levied with a $30,000 IRS tax lien at the time, and that $300,000 of the $1.6 million that she wanted, of the so-called investment that she wanted from Antonio Brown was to be used to purchase the property already owned by the accuser and her mother, which already seems fishy when he declined to make the investment. And when AB said, no, I can't make that kind of investment, she cut him off, said, fine, I can't talk to you anymore. She was upset. And then in 2018, she resurfaced and offered to travel to Pennsylvania where he was living and into South Florida to train him and to have other encounters that they had. So after she was upset with him, she decided to fly back to still spend time with him, to train him and to do the adult things that they were doing. Another year later, and she decides right before her wedding, yep, he did this to me. So this is all just part of the story that seems fishy. I'll let you guys decide what you think. I know what I think, or at least what I'm leaning towards, but I just think in the grand scheme of things, all this really does is make it that much more difficult for Bill Belichick to look AB in the face and say, I really want you out there being a Patriot. It's just, at some point, you don't know if this is a karmic thing or if this is just a strategic thing, because some of these things do seem strategic. But the reality of it is something went wrong and now there's fallout. I just love to just talk sports, but this is one of these stories that you just have to look into, and we'll see how this plays out in the coming week. In the meantime, he is cleared to play in week 2, and there's a chance he'll be wearing number 1. He had number 1 on in practice, so we're not sure. The Patriots also traded wide receiver Demaryius Thomas to the New York Jets, which a lot of people think clears cap space for, you guessed it, Rob Gronkowski, who tweeted the googly eyes after that move was made, which I guess means he's watching and everyone thinks he's going to come out of retirement. Don't forget, I did mention weeks ago that a year off makes all the difference, and you'd be surprised how many guys leave and come back. Brett Favre did it. Plenty of guys did it. Jason Witten did it. Hell, I did it. So it happens all the time. Do not be shocked. And as we head into week 2, I just wanted to briefly recap a little bit about week 1. So many cool storylines about week 1. You know, the Cleveland Browns were labeled world beaters in the offseason, and they won the offseason Super Bowl. However, they did not win week 1 against the Tennessee Titans, and Baker Mayfield looked awful. And it's not just his fault. You know, the offensive line looked awful. He was on his back most of the day and throwing interceptions and just looked rough. But I got to say, Baker, you know, for all the talking that Baker Mayfield did and even kind of taking shots at other quarterbacks, you know, when the Giants selected Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield did that article in GQ where he called it a shocking move and just thought, man, how dumb are the Giants? I can't believe they took that guy. So while he's running his mouth in the offseason, which he did, and I specifically remember having a 2 Cents episode where I said, man, I'd really like for Baker Mayfield just to keep quiet and just focus on the field because this league will humble you. And when week 1 is going to be here before you know it. And sure enough, week 1 came and he got the crap kicked out of him. The Browns lost. Odell Beckham wore a 300,000 Richard Mille watch, which ended up becoming the talk of the game because there was nothing else to talk about with the Cleveland Browns because they didn't do anything on the field. Jarvis Landry did look good, though. I do like Jarvis Landry a lot. I think he and Odell are going to be a fantastic tandem at some point. And Njoku needs to know how to catch the football more consistently. But Lamar Jackson, to me, is probably the biggest story of week 1 in a sense that everyone who called him, basically a souped-up running back, everyone who said this guy can't throw, I don't care what you say, he just can't throw. And I get it. It was against the Miami Dolphins. I understand that. But he beat, and I say the Ravens beat the Miami Dolphins 59-10. Yes, the Dolphins are tanking. Yes, half the team requested a trade after the game. But it doesn't change the fact that Lamar Jackson went 17 of 20 for 324 yards and 5 touchdowns he accounted for. Guy only rushed for 6 yards. This was all with his arm. Between him and that receiver, Hollywood Brown, who must be from Hollywood, Florida, because he's not from California with them goals in his mouth. This dude ran all over the daggone Miami Dolphins. When I mean ran, I mean he threw the ball, and Hollywood ran all over them. It was amazing to watch. It was amazing to watch how many different receivers he targeted, how accurate he was with the football. Even with his funky release motion, still so accurate, still so much arm strength, and he still has so much growth that he's going to, take on over this course of the season. I want to see him week 2 because that's when you make your biggest jump, especially as a young quarterback. But, man, he looked fantastic. Mark Ingram had 2 touchdowns. That's my dog. We were in New Orleans together with the Saints. I love Mark Ingram. He's the best dancer on the team, and he is a underrated back. So I'm glad he's doing well. Mike Brown, 4 receptions, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, these guys went crazy on the Dolphins, as they should have, but still, to go that crazy is really, really impressive. The Falcons struggled mightily against the Vikings. The Eagles came back and won against the Redskins, who came out looking very, very, in control of that game. And then the Eagles finally got it together, and Deshaun Jackson reminded you that he is still the best deep threat in the NFL when he wants to be. That dude is something else. I'm definitely worried about Cam Newton and the Panthers, even though they played well against the Rams. I'm just worried because I don't like the fact that I'm not sure he's all the way healthy, even though Christian McCaffrey is going to be able to do a lot of things for the Panthers, and he's an all-purpose guy. He can run, can catch, can return. He's special. But Cam, man, you want to see Cam sharper, and you want to see that offensive line protect him, and then you want to see Cam stop with these goofy outfits. Stop dressing like a Batman villain. Take off the bonnets and the goofy hats, and I don't even know, he had like a scarf tied around his neck. It's hard enough just being a black quarterback in this league and trying to represent, the past and the future. You don't have to wear a costume to do it, too. That's enough of that. Even though the Colts lost, Malik Hooker had a one-handed interception. That's my Ohio State guy. That was a beautiful interception. I don't know if I've ever seen a one-handed interception like that, and a solid return afterwards. Unbelievable. The Chiefs looked fantastic. Tyreek Hill had a shoulder. That's a big, big deal. We want to see him come back healthy, but they beat up on the Jaguars, who lost their starting quarterback, Nick Foles, who actually looked pretty good before cracking his clavicle, and now he is probably done for the year, which sparked a trade for backup quarterback from the Pittsburgh Steelers to go down there to the Jaguars. But, yeah, Foles is out. His backup looked very, very good, though. So we'll see there. Bengals lost, never a shock there. Seahawks and Russell Wilson handled that. The Cowboys stomped the Giants. Dak Prescott is playing like he knows he is playing for a contract. You want that extension, Dak? You got a ball, and ball he did. Zeke looked a little bit rusty, but did look big and strong. He just looked a little, not quite in football shape, but he's getting there. He'll be just fine. The Lions and Cardinals tied a final in the OT, which is, I don't know how the NFL still allows ties in the game. That's the most frustrating thing for a player and I can imagine a fan. So in a way, they both lost, but Kyler did look good in the second half. That first half, he looked awful. In that second half, I think he threw 3 touchdowns and really came back. Second biggest story to me, though, and I'm going to probably wrap it after this, is, well, it's first to second. Okay. The Broncos and the Raiders. I loved how the Raiders reacted after everything that went on with AB, after all the distractions, after just all the mayhem, and even the hard knocks, right? That's a distraction, having cameras in your locker room and everything, even though it was entertaining. They still came out there and they handled business against the Broncos, who, were led by Joe Flacco, who's a much better quarterback than what the Broncos have had. But the Raiders played a complete game. The Raiders' offensive line is legit. Biggest offensive line in football. These guys average 330, and it looks like it when you watch them on film, and they are grinding teams into dust. Absolutely pushing guys around and resetting the line of scrimmage, which was very impressive to see. Derek Carr was out there throwing darts, 259, 22 of 26, very accurate. 1 touchdown. Most of their touchdowns came rushing. Jacobs from Alabama, man, great back right there. He's going to be very, very good. 85 yards on 23 carries and 2 touchdowns. And it was nice to see the receiver Williams, a guy who I think thought, you know what, once Antonio Brown's out of there, I want you guys to realize that we didn't lose anything because we got me. And he showed it. He played very, very well. 100 yards receiving and touchdown, but he was a matchup nightmare. The tight end was a matchup nightmare. Raiders played fantastic. Biggest story to me, though, is the Patriots absolutely obliterated the Pittsburgh Steelers 33-3. Yes, the Patriots have Tom Terrific. Yes, the Patriots have Bill Belichick, the mastermind. Yes, they are the class of the NFL for the last 2 decades, it seems like. But Pittsburgh Steelers, all the talk we heard out of Pittsburgh was they're just so happy to get Le'Veon and Antonio Brown out of there. Now they can just focus on the guys in that building and how well they're going to be, and they're going to tear it up, and they're all feeling great. And Ben's chance at, salvaging his legacy is going to be this year, and how James Conner is every bit the back Le'Veon Bell was, and how Juju doesn't have to worry about Antonio Brown. So now he can be the man and the true number 1 receiver. And what did you find out? You found out a couple things. You found out, 1, offensive line is not as good as advertised. You find out, 2, Ben is aging and looked slow, and his release looked slow. He looked late and inaccurate with the football. You find out that the Pittsburgh defense and secondary is what it's always been. It's like Swiss cheese. You can carve them right up. And then you also watched as Juju struggled in single coverage or in double coverage, and as James Conner got stymied in the backfield time and time again. So all I found out about the Steelers was they are not who we thought they were. And I found out that the Browns, as Delaney Walker tight end for the oh my goodness, come on, the tight end for the Titans said after the game, is that the Browns are who we thought they were. And that is the same old Cleveland Browns. And that is going to be the week 1 wrap up of all the NFL and just the things on my mind. And also that is going to wrap up the 2 Cents podcast. I really wanted to get into the quick article about Kevin Durant, but honestly, I don't even want to get into it. It's KD. KD's basically just saying he never really felt like he belonged with the Golden State Warriors, the same way he never really felt like he belonged with the OKC Thunder, the same way he never belongs anywhere because he's the most sensitive athlete in modern sports era. I've never seen a guy like him. Dude, just play the game. Business is a part of it. That's what you sign up for, and deal with it, bro. There's a lot harder things out there to deal with. In the meantime, I am Jay Richardson. This has been the 2 Cents podcast, and I want you guys to continue to follow us on 2 Cents Show on IG. If you want to, if you want to respond to anything I'm saying, or if you want to ask questions, or if you want something that you want me to discuss, please reach out to me on Twitter at jrichardson99, or obviously on Instagram. Just put my name in. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.